So I guess one of the big questions that we should all be asking ourselves for the tools that we design and the architectures is, who are we giving the power to? Something like Google Docs, I'm giving the power to Google. And if I'm building something like Tor, I'm giving the power to the users and taking it away from the middle. There is no center that gets to collect all the data and use it or not after that.
And thanks to all of you for sticking around until the end of the day. We're going to have a great conversation. Roger, thank you for being my guest here.
Yes.
Appreciate it. We're going to have a lot of fun learning about Tor, its history, its future, all that stuff. Just a little to start us out. I'm going to ask you a few questions, but I'm also going to try and save a little bit of time at the end, so we can do a little AMA with Roger at the end. So if there are questions that you guys have, I think they might be better than the ones that I came up with. So I'm interested in that. To give you a little context, I'm going to introduce myself first, just because the questions that I have come from a place of talking tech policy, right? So like that was my perspective. I run the industry's, one of the industry's major tech trade associations called the Internet Infrastructure Coalition. You may have heard about it around town. And I'm also on the advisory committee of CloudFest, so help pick the content. And I ran into you in Kyoto.
Yep.
We were at IGF.
Internet Governance Forum.
We were at the Internet Governance Forum, and I ran into you, and I was absolutely fascinated. So I know the answer to some of these questions because I was absolutely fascinated because I listened to some of your stories there, and I said, we've got to get you at CloudFest. We've got to hear your stories. This crowd needs to hear your stories. So I think I asked you on the spot if you would come speak, and now we made it happen.
Yep.
So I'll start out by saying, I'm Christian Dawson. I'm Executive Director of the Internet Infrastructure Coalition, and you are co-founder of Tor.
Yes.
Okay. So what is Tor, except for an amazing T-shirt with an onion on it?
Yeah, so Tor is a nonprofit in the US that writes privacy software. Tor is a network of volunteers around the world who handle traffic for millions of Tor users around the world. And Tor is a protocol and specification for how to provide that privacy, security, anonymity to people around the world.
Anonymity, privacy. Okay, extremely important topics, things that we all care about here. You co-founded it. So can you talk a little bit about the process of co-founding Tor? Like, you had to start with a vision. Like, what was the original vision of Tor when you sat with your co-founder to figure out what you were going to build?
Yeah, so it started as a research project, working with researchers from the Naval Research Lab who had the onion routing design, but I was the one who said, part of what you should do for research is actually build it and try it and see what it actually turns out to be. So at the time, I was thinking more on the civil liberties side. Like, Google was around. I want to be able to do a Google search without getting tracked and traced by the companies, without ending up in their data sets. So it started off as the civil liberties side, but part of the fun of it is a lot of people need privacy for a lot of different reasons. So yeah, it starts off as civil liberties, but you need those other types of users at the same time, whether that's Egyptian activists or FBI agents, all in the same network in order to have privacy together.
Yeah. I have been running the Internet Infrastructure Coalition, talking to people about privacy policy, encryption policy, stuff like that for 13 years now. And in that amount of time, a hell of a lot of stuff has changed when it comes to privacy. Been going to CloudFest for about as long, and over the years have gotten a chance to talk to people who have driven a lot of those conversations. Edward Snowden was on a big screen talking to us here a number of years ago. Mm-hmm. We've had Assange talking to us. We've had a lot of figures that have changed our view of how privacy works on the internet. When did you found Tor, and how has this sort of changing evolution of people's perception of privacy changed the importance of the the perception of the importance of what you're doing?
Yeah, so depends how you count it, but 2002, 2001, 2003, something like that.
Okay.
So the context back then was the cypherpunks world, where remailers were a thing, and the peer-to-peer community was a thing. I was talking to Corey about the O'Reilly peer-to-peer book that happened around then, and it was a group of young, excited developers who were designing peer-to-peer tools. Like, one of my friends is the BitTorrent guy, and he was building BitTorrent, and I was building Tor.
Got it. So this is years before like the Snowden revelations and things like that, where all of a sudden a lot of public opinion, not just sort of like the people who are inside the industry, right, but real like top-line public opinion is focused on internet privacy.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of milestones like that. The Snowden example is one, but the Arab Spring is another. So there are a lot of cases over the years where, of course, we're all gradually realizing that we need more safety on the internet, but it takes events like that for the front page newspaper to be talking about it also.
It's interesting. So you've been talking about how you were really interested in civil society and building tools for civil society. And I'm interested, as each one of those milestones comes up, does it bring more, I would say, casual users into the Tor community?
Yeah, I would say yes. And part of our challenge with Tor is to grow the network, grow the volunteers, grow the capacity so that we can handle all of these users who want it.
Okay.
And that ordinariness is really important for a lot of situations. So, for example, take the case of people using Tor in Iran. We have something like 50,000 or 100,000 daily users in Iran, and you might start off by saying, well, wait a minute, you've got political dissidents in a dictator country. Why don't they just round them up and kill them? Like, how can you still be a Tor user in Iran? And the answer is, most of the Tor users in Iran are using it because they blocked Facebook. Not because they're political dissidents, but because they stopped them from getting to their blogs about kittens or whatever.
Makes sense.
And that ordinariness is why it's safe to be a Tor user in Iran. The average person is just the average citizen who wants to get to Facebook.
So is that a typical use case? You're not then... So certainly you are trying to build the tool for the extreme use cases to ensure that you are protecting the people who need their privacy for their livelihood, right?
Yes, but if you only have Edward Snowden using your tool, then he doesn't have anybody to blend with. So you need not just it can't just be high-profile whistleblowers. It has to also be activists around the world and law enforcement and diplomats and so on, all blending together.
So was your idea then always focused on reaching sort of that critical mass scale? Did it always, was the idea to always achieve some sort of global adoption?
Yes. I mean, it's hard to know what counts as global. At the beginning, you say, let me build a tool that I can use and that my friends can use and that people who care about this privacy thing can use. And then you find more people using it. And then you hear about stories of people using it for reasons you hadn't thought about. And that growth of diversity of users is part of the safety.
Yeah. And I think that I have seen, be it the Arab Spring, be it the Snowden revelations, be it any of the milestones that have come after that, and more of the public perception, there have been a wash of privacy-focused tools that are out there that are also looking for that sort of that mass adoption. Are you focusing a lot of any of your attention on trying to sort of stay relevant in the field of technical tools that are focused on privacy and the rest of the landscape?
Yeah, so at the beginning, Tor was a proxy, and you can configure your application to do a SOX proxy connection to Tor. And if you want to use a browser, good luck finding a browser and keeping that safe. And then we realized that users were doing whatever they were doing to try to browse with Tor, and we needed to provide an actual privacy-oriented browser. That's how Tor browser came to be. So at the beginning, it was just a proxy, and then we realized, For usability, we need to give them like beginning to end, here's the tool that you can use. And then things like censorship started happening, where a lot of people use Tor in Vietnam and other places where you can't reach BBC, so they use Tor to do that. But then the governments try to block people from reaching the Tor network, and then we go back and forth trying to come up with ways to make it hard for them to block Tor. So that arms race, the cat and mouse game, is still going strong.
It's very interesting, and I want to unpack a lot of it right now. But before we do, one of the things that I thought we should address sort of head on is I know that Tor has received criticism by some people from receiving financial support from the US government. And some people might see that as a conflict with its mission of privacy and independence. And so, like, maybe you can unpack a little bit for that, and how, like, I assume that you don't see it as a conflict with Tor's integrity and independence.
Yeah, so we've
Tell us a
had
little bit about the funding.
we've had a variety of funding from various governments: U.S. government, German government, Swedish government, and some of that is National Science Foundation funding to like write research papers, but some of it is State Department funding to do trainings for people in Uganda who are LGBTQ, and teaching people how to be safer in dangerous situations like that. And some of it has been DARPA funding to build Tor to be stronger for the types of people who need it around the world and in governments. So part of the challenge there, is teaching those funders what our principles are and what our priorities are. But a lot of it comes down to individuals in those funding agencies who are big Tor fans, and they're trying to find a way to funnel some of their budget into internet freedom and making things safer. So it definitely is a tension, a balance, a conflict in the independence side of things, because we know what we want to work on, and we try to shop that around to various funders and try to convince them to do it. And which things we can get funded, those are the things we focus on next. So the things that we can't get funded are harder for us to be able to focus on next. But it's not so much a conflict on the privacy side, because governments use Tor also. And they need it for the same sorts of reasons. Whether, like, I call it anonymity for the research crowd, and I call it privacy for my parents, and I call it communications security for companies that I talk to. But for governments, we work on traffic analysis resistant communication networks. And again, it's the same security properties. It's just how you frame it for them, so that, like, the government says, I'm going to be sending a diplomat to Israel, and I don't want somebody watching the hotel internet connection to learn what affiliation that person has. And I don't want somebody watching, like, the mail server in Maryland to learn where my diplomats are today. And that's, I'd call that privacy, but they need other words for that.
That is very different than the FBI funding Tor.
Yes, the FBI uses Tor. The CIA uses Tor. So, and I mean, there's an example a while ago where the CIA like rolled their own anonymity design. The idea is you've got a bunch of informants around the world, and they set up a web page template. So each informant should make their own fake website. And you can like talk to your CIA people through that fake website. And Iran figured out that there's this certain phrase that shows up in all the fake websites because they all use the same template. So if you just Google for that phrase, you get a list of all the CIA informants. And Iran found them all and killed them all, and then told China, who found them all and killed them all. And the CIA started with, let's learn the lesson of don't use a template for your fake website. But the real lesson is, don't roll your own anonymity system, and don't be the only user of your anonymity system. You need to have something like Tor in order to be able to have it be safe.
It makes a lot of sense when you put it that way. And it also, I think, reminds us that all governments, and I'm not just talking about the US government, they're not monoliths, and they need to perform a whole bunch of different functions. In my own role as running this trade association, we've got a project called the VPN Trust Initiative, where we're trying to get VPNs to align around certain responsibility principles. And there are lots of there are lots of groups within the U.S. government that don't like VPNs, and that worldwide don't like VPNs from a government perspective. But then there are parts of the U.S. government that collaborate with us. For instance, a State Department effort to try and get more VPNs into certain countries where they want more open speech, right? And so it's a complex system.
Yep.
It's a complex story. I'm glad you were able to be open with us about that. That really helps. But it doesn't change your principles, is I guess my point. And the principles that you have around anonymity and privacy and independence are unaltered no matter who is funding the projects.
Yes. So decentralization is one of the important topics that we should keep talking about here. The centralization around the world is driving me nuts in terms of Apple and Akamai and Cloudflare and Facebook and it seems like so many of the business models involve pushing all the data to the middle and all the power to the middle. And part of what tools like Tor try to do is instead empower the individuals to decide who gets to learn the data about them. So I guess one of the big questions that we should all be asking ourselves for the tools that we design and the architectures is, who are we giving the power to? Mm-hmm. When I'm building something like Google Docs, I'm giving the power to Google because they get to watch everything, they get all the data afterwards. And if I'm building something like Tor, I'm giving the power to the users and taking it away from the middle. There is no center that gets to collect all the data and use it or not after that.
Well, here at CloudFest, you've got a whole bunch of people that are building internet infrastructure. They're building cloud services. They're associated with organizations that help people that are building cloud services. So when you're talking about these principles that are important to you, how can they translate that into the kinds of things that they're doing? How can you give them advice on the builds that they're doing with their own networks?
Yeah, so think about who you're empowering is the same answer as before. And building cloud services doesn't mean that you're centralizing the power and the data and so on in one place. Like, there are plenty of principles for how to protect users more, like don't ever collect data that you don't want to have, the data minimization thing. Tor tries to take this as farther, which is don't ever have any data that you aren't willing to make public. So I don't want to live in a world where I have a data set that I have to somehow try to keep secret because people are going to break in and take it from me. So the only answer is to not have the data in the first place. And I understand, like, there's complexities of business goals and so on, but think through the architecture of what you're building and who it's helping.
That's great. And I am hoping that when we go to Q&A in a few minutes that you might have some more questions about how the things that he's doing apply to your networks. But since I am talking about things from a policy perspective, because that's what I have, I'm interested in finding out from you whether any of the things that we've been working on in, for instance, the VPN community I was talking about, where we're fighting against VPN shutdown attempts in India and Pakistan and other places in the world, like Myanmar, where we have been fighting IP and domain level blocking regimes that have been set up in France and Italy and throughout the EU. Now Spain, there are talks about similar setups, blocking regimes being set up in the United States. Whether these things are affecting Tor as well, and whether you need to fight these battles as well.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of overlap in terms of companies around the world who are trying to let their users reach them. And whether that's BBC trying to find ways to not get blocked in Vietnam, or, there's the whole arms race with Netflix and VPNs and so on that I won't get into here. But the reachability side is certainly something that overlaps. And so the VPN world is interesting because in one way, it's helping a lot of people have more safety than they had before, and there are a lot of people who are able to use VPNs that don't find Tor as fast or as fun to use or something. But on the other hand, the VPN world, in a lot of ways, has this same problem with centralization that I was talking about before, where they're in the middle, they know all the users, they know what the users are doing, and it always starts with, I promise I'm never looking at any of your traffic. Okay, actually, yeah, we look at your traffic, but I promise I'll never log anything. Okay, of course we have logs, but I promise I won't tell anybody what I see. Well, of course I answer law enforcement when they ask, and I answer from any country. And of course my business just went out, my company just went out of business, so of course I sold my data set to a data broker. Like, what did you expect? So the problem is that slippery slope happens every time, and it's because of the centralization of the architecture. So think through who you're empowering. And so one extreme example on the VPN side, I was talking to a friend who was part of the Iran revolution back in 2008, and he was telling me a story of training people in Iran about how to get around the blocking of Facebook and how to get around the surveillance going on. And in Iran, it started with people saying, my government is stupid, they don't know how to watch the internet, I just need some way to get to Facebook. And he was teaching people how to use VPNs, how to use Tor, how to use open proxies, how to use various other tools. And at one point, he said, he learned that, he realized that everybody he had taught anything other than Tor to was now dead or in jail. And then he decided that he was only going to teach Tor after that. So one of the lessons is you may not fully understand your threat model right now, and you might say, oh, I don't need that level of privacy. And I hope that stays true for you, but you might discover later that you were wrong in the past. And that's what Tor is trying to be there for, so that we give privacy traffic analysis resistance by default. Yeah. And hopefully you don't, hopefully your personal situation never needs that, but more and more of the world seems to be falling apart, and having some of your own control over who gets to learn what you're doing on the internet sure seems smart.
Okay, wow. Well, you're in a room full of people who continue to take data and digitize it, put it online. We're driving the cloud era, right?
Yep.
And so as we move things forward with the cloud era, what you're talking about, these kinds of things, there's a certain extent to which we're driving it, right? And so as cloud adoption continues to grow, privacy concerns aren't going away, they're getting bigger. So what's Tor doing in the future to try to address all the data that we're bringing to
Yeah, so we definitely, the world keeps noticing that there are privacy risks, and we need to keep on building tools. But at the same time, you all in the cloud world can be very helpful to us. So here are a couple of asks for you. One of them is there are people who want to host Tor relays on your infrastructure. Please don't be scared of this. Please understand that there are millions of people around the world, and some of them are Egyptian activists, but some of them are diplomats from Germany, and they want their security, and they rely on the Tor network to get it. So please don't be scared of hosting Tor relays. We need that. We need more relays in more places. Another ask is if you run a website, please don't block Tor users from reading your website. I was talking to somebody earlier who's like, of course I run a financial firm, of course I'm going to block all the Tor users, and of course I'm going to block Vietnam, and of course I'm going to block most of Asia. I don't have users there, what do I care about them reading my website? And maybe in a corporate world, fine, you could block whoever you want to block, but there are a lot of users out there who actually do want to be interacting with the rest of the web and doing it safely. But in a government world, like the Italian train website, the Italian government train website won't let you reach it over Tor. And maybe there should be some sort of democratic principle among democratic countries, and hopefully Italy is still one of those, to provide internet access, including serving people from Vietnam, from VPNs or from Tor, or otherwise people who want some privacy.
These are these are great ways in which our community can support the efforts that you're doing, and ways that we can sort of assist you in doing more of the good work that you do within the privacy ecosystem. I also know that you have just been on a whirlwind tour of a whole bunch of different privacy conferences and in conversations. We're like your fourth or fifth stop on a speaking tour about various things. And I'm interested if you have any recommendations on helping cloud providers sort of plug into the global privacy ecosystem. Where else can they go learn about the importance of not just the work that you do, but all the work that you're out there talking about as you, the word is not evangelize, the word is
Ambassador. That's
yeah,
the word we were talking about.
That's right.
Yep.
As you go out as an ambassador of Tor.
Yeah, so there are a bunch of different communities out there. I was just in Taipei for RightsCon, which is an internet freedom human rights gathering, and it will be happening again, I think, next summer in Central Africa somewhere, maybe in Kenya. So that's one interesting crowd. There's also I was in Thailand last week for FOSS Asia, and part of the fun of this from my perspective is interacting with communities of people who aren't the ones, like most people here are white men from Europe, so there are a lot of other types of people around the world, and they have their own cultural expectations and assumptions and so on. So meeting with like Thai dissidents who end up going to the jungle and talking to Myanmar dissidents and doing an internet training using satellite internet in the jungle somewhere, and then they both go back to their countries. That's a wildly different world than the one we're talking about here, but those people really need to learn how to be safe on the internet also.
Thank you for that. I promised that we do a couple of questions from the audience. My last question's very short, and then I'm going to turn it to you all. And Jeff here is going to go walk over to wherever you are and hear your questions. So put your hands up right away if you want to ask a couple of questions. While you do, I'm going to ask the last one, which is there a place where people can get your cool t-shirt?
This particular cool t-shirt, which we call Conversation Starting Green, is no longer made in the world. And the Tor people who do swag are like, oh, nobody wants a green Tor t-shirt. Are you kidding me? But every time I go to DEF CON, there are people like, how do I get a green Tor t-shirt? So you can get a cool black Tor shirt, like the one I was wearing yesterday with a cool roots design on it, by running a relay or otherwise helping us like do a translation, help some users and so on. But yeah, the green shirts, you have to go back in time and get one.
Okay, portal to the past. Jeff, we got a couple of people who want to ask
We
questions.
do. I'm on this side, and Elizabeth's on that side. We're going to start right here. Okay. Say your name first and company.
Okay, great. Hi, Dennis is my name. I like dinosaurs. I have one question. I read about that law enforcement and national states have a huge number of Tor middle nodes and entry nodes and are able to identify people via timing-based attacks, that they can see the traffic is exiting the Tor network and is going through the middle nodes. And that's great for law enforcement. They were huge success, but yeah, it's a little bit dangerous for dissidents, activists, and I want to know what's your view on this topic. And then I have a second question. What's your favorite entry to the Tor network? Thank you.
Yeah, so this is a rumor that goes around and is hard to squash, which, so for example, there's a guy in Europol who keeps doing press releases saying, Tor is totally broken, could you all stop using it, please? And I guess he's trying to bust somebody who's using Tor, and he hopes that they'll switch from Tor to a VPN or something, and then he can attack them more successfully. So there are certainly people out there who are spreading that rumor over and over and over for some reason. I actually know about half of the relay operators because many Tor relays are run by nonprofits around the world. In Germany, there's Article 5 and Article 7 and Zwiebelfreunde and other nonprofits that come together as hacker spaces or other groups to run relays. There's one in Sweden, there's one in Luxembourg, there's one in France. So there are a bunch of nonprofits out there that run relays, and they're part of our community, and we know who they are. So I don't think governments run very many relays at all, but that's actually not good news because they don't have to run a relay. they wait for this fine fellow to run a relay on a piece of the internet that they're already able to surveil. So the big question is, how much of the internet can various attackers see? And that internet is getting more and more centralized as the years go by. There are only so many undersea cables, only so many app stores, only so many all sorts of things. They're all consolidating. So the big challenge in the Tor world is, if you can see the traffic flow going in and the corresponding traffic flow going out, then yes, you can do math to line them up. And part of what we as the technical research community need to do is figure out how to add padding in a way that, that makes that math harder. And part of what you, the cloud community, need to do is stop selling net flows. Stop aggregating and selling net flows to people who buy them up and then use them to harm people around the world. So this is definitely a policy challenge that, I mean, I understand the reason why people collect and sell net flows, war on terror, all of that. But part of this is we need to decide what world we want to live in. Do we want to be in the world where we keep giving more power to the people in the middle? Because that's not working out for us. There are all these problems that are happening this year, this month, with my government, with your government. We're going to see more of those over the coming months. So we need to decide, do we want to live in a world where that centralization enables the people in the middle to harm society more? Or do we want to live in a world where we're empowering individuals to have their own safety?
So I think what we'll do is we're going to do 2 more questions on stage, and then we will close things down. And do you want to hang out for a couple, and we'll have a smaller Q&A with people who want to.
I'm going to be wearing this bright green shirt all evening, so find me,
actually have a
I'll
spot
answer
for you.
questions.
We want you to be out there in the goth lobby right there, because that way you're going to be moving chairs around in here and stuff like that.
So 2 more questions, and then anybody who wants to ask a question who doesn't get called is the next 2. They can still go over there and talk to Roger afterwards.
Get the next one, I think the gentleman back here. You're able to state your name and your company.
Hi, my name is Eskild. I'm from Sudes in the Netherlands. In Europe, there's a growing digital sovereignty movement. Do you think that's a good idea?
Digital sovereignty. That's a complicated sentence, and I don't know what various people mean when they say it.
Okay, what we mean by it is by being less dependent on big tech.
That sounds great, right? I mean, that's an easy one. So the big challenge is, how do you get there? Because we see the EU passing regulations and then suing Google for violating them, and Google drags them down with lawyers and ends up never actually paying anything. So part of the answer for that was in Corey's talk yesterday, where he was talking about how you need to somehow be able to attack them in every European country, not just the one that they claim they're going to defend themselves in. But yeah, data sovereignty, national sovereignty, it makes a lot of sense that each of these individual organizations would want to protect itself. Let me tell you a fun story from Tunisia long ago. So I was in Tunisia right after the Arab Spring happened, and I was talking to the fellow who ran the internet agency there, and he was saying, yes, they do use Smart Filter to censor the internet, and they pay $1 million a year for their license fee, and actually they pay cheap versions because then they go to Saudi Arabia and charge them full price for the censorship. But he was explaining that there's a third-party company that actually operates the Smart Filter for them. And he wouldn't tell me which one, but it's a company outside of Tunisia. So I'm like, wait a minute, there's some company in France that can decide what the Tunisian military can see on the internet? That's a national sovereignty question. That's not a privacy security thing. So yes, figuring out how you can defend yourself against the surveillance capitalism world, and capitalism is a very strong but very dangerous tendency in our corporate world. And yeah, how do we defend that? Great question.
All right, our last question over here. Say your name first.
Hi, Avi from Fraunhofer. So I have actually like 3 questions, but like I'll be very quick. So first one is on the flip side, right? Like so there are cyber criminals who are using like darknet, right? And of course, like the law enforcement agencies, they're trying to catch them. So on Tor Network to actually like fight against that. So did you think about any sort of consensus-based selective de-anonymization, so in case such that like not centralized but distributed manner, some protocol that could like help law enforcement agencies that could be done over Tor, right? So this is my first question. Second question is if you have like any development going on against well-known website fingerprinting attack and traffic analysis. Only we mentioned about adding the pads, right? But that also harms the latency. And then third one is like why you have 3 relays for Tor? Like, so what was the main design decision like when you have 3 relays?
Okay, so the first one, no, we do not plan to put any backdoors in Tor, because when you design weaknesses into your tools, you end up making those weaknesses available to other folks, to any folks. And who would we trust to decide how that should work? Do we go to the U.S. government, and when a judge says something is scary enough, then we should try to de-anonymize it? That same mechanism would then be used in Saudi Arabia by the judges that they have there. So nobody knows how to build a decentralized backdoor in a way that doesn't weaken the system more. So no backdoors, and yes, that means that that Tor is available for good people and bad people. That's a balance that we have to live with. In terms of the traffic analysis website fingerprinting attacks, happy to chat more about that afterwards. But basically, for the summary for the whole crowd, there's a great research community called the Privacy Enhancing Technology Symposium, petsymposium.org, where there are a bunch of academics who are coming up with great Tor attacks and Tor defenses. And one of the big questions is, if you're watching just the Tor client and you see the encrypted flow back and forth, can you guess which web page they went to? And it turns out that this attack works great in the laboratory, like in a setting where there are 100 web pages in the world total, you can guess which one of the 100 they went to. But in the real world, with billions of web pages and JavaScript and advertisements and so on, this attack works almost not at all, or at least way less well. So that's an example of where we need to bridge the gap between academic research and the real world. And I'm going to let my moderator finish this so that we can go talk more about Tor off stage.
Yes. And for my 15th question, oh wait, I'm sorry.
No, so I knew I was right when we met in Kyoto at IGF, and I was like, you've got to come talk to the CloudFest people. They're going to love this conversation. It's been really enlightening. I'm very happy that there were so many hands up that didn't get to get picked. You guys can go on over here and continue the conversation with Roger. For everybody else, I want you to give him a big round of applause for coming and talking to us today. Thank you so much for being here. Very cool.